Hello, my name is Brian and welcome to the Win911 How to Instructional Video Series. In this video, I'll be talking about InTouch ME and how you can bring your alarms over into Win911. The first step in the process is configuring your InTouch to work with Win911. I'll be walking through some step-by-step setup for that. Next, I'll be showing you the two methods you can use to bring your alarms over, which includes the subscription filters and the alarm import method. Finally, I'll discuss some of the troubleshooting tips we have using our Logviewer. On the Win911 website, there's some reference material that will be very helpful for this process. Under the Resources tab on win911.com, under the Full Online User Manual, there's a pop-up. Once you have the file open, you'll see on the left side, if you click Win911, there's a drop-down. Click on Alarming, and then eventually InTouch ME. There's step-by-step setup for your SCADA and instructions for setting up your filters. Okay, inside of InTouch ME, the first step, you'll have to open up the Project Explorer, right-click, and eventually you'll get to the Communications tab to set up your communication ports. Over here, you'll have the TCP port. This is normally 1, 2, 3, 4 by default. Whatever port you have configured, just make a note of it. We'll be using that over in Win911 for the configuration. Once we're inside of Win911, we'll be alarming InTouch ME Projects tab. From here, you'll see Project Details on this tab. This is where you can give your project a name, and then you can connect to your server, connect to your application. So you can use the ellipsis to navigate to your project to get to the appropriate server. Back to that previous slide with the port. Here's where you'll find that port. I just show 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what I have it configured as. But whatever your port is, this is where you'll set it up. Finally, you can do your set up your enable security. You can click on that, and some more options will come up for security if you choose to do that route. After this is all set up, you can do the test connection and can verify the connection between Win911 and the SCADA. The next step in the process is health alarms. Now we're on the health tab over here. And health alarm, this is used to make sure that your InTouch ME is working. If this goes down, you'd want Win911 to notify on this. This is a recommended configuration that you go through. It can be very helpful to you. So you'll define which strategy you want to go off if this happens. I have one called System Configuration. That's one that I made, but you can choose whatever strategy you would like. And going back to tactics and strategies, if you have not configured those already, I recommend doing so. There's some helpful videos on our how-to video section which go over configuring your tactics and strategies. Next, we'll configure our watchdogs. So you can do something like a PLC heartbeat or a SCADA alarm or something like that. This is where you can configure this watchdog. So still in the projects, under watchdogs, under that tab, you can define a heartbeat or whatever it might be, a name, description. This is the tag name. This is only an example, not an actual real heartbeat or a real alarm, but just keep that in mind. You'll also define your timeout for monitoring that watchdog, and again, which strategy you choose to deploy. This strategy will point to a call, list of people, or a tactic. This is a quick rundown of all the SCADAs that Win911 supports for a direct connect method, including FactoryTalk, iFix, Simplicity, InTouch ME, InTouch System Platform. If you're not using one of these SCADAs, you can use OPC as a connection into Win911. Today I'll be focusing on InTouch ME, and there's two methods you can use to bring your alarms in, the import and subscriptions. If you use subscriptions, you can filter on all this criteria, including your alarm worksheet number, messages, tag names, priorities, and selections. Comparing the two methods, your subscription filters or your alarm import. Filters, there's a dynamic means of bringing your alarms over into Win911. What does that mean? Say, for example, you have 5 drives, drive 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and they all have a fault. So if you filter on the tag name that has drive using some asterisks and some wildcards, and you add a 6th drive, then this 6th drive would automatically be brought into this subscription filter. So you can dynamically add new alarms and filter them into existing subscriptions. In addition to this dynamic means of filtering, it's a little bit less taxing on the processor and doesn't take up as much RAM. Therefore, subscription filters is a recommended version of bringing your alarms over into Win911 by us at the company. The alternative method to bring your alarms over, I'll show you at the end of the video, is the import method. This is similar to version 7, and you'll group your alarms and you point a specific alarm to a strategy. And that strategy will point to a tactic or call list of people. Inside of Win911, on the Alarming InTouch ME Subscriptions tab, this is where you can go ahead and you can make your own subscriptions. This slide is to give you an example of what you can filter on and how the filters work together. All those items, you have your worksheets, messages, tag names, priority range, and selections. Any of these items in the red, these are all ANDed together, and the blue items internally here, they're ORed. So in this filter, we named it Building Alarms, and we will filter anything with a specific tag name that has a wildcard with fault, so anything leading up to this that has something underscore fault, or something that contains COM-fail. This would be included in this and caught by this filter. It would have this, and it's looking for a specific priority range between 100 and 255. So if it has one of these items and the specific priority, this would catch this alarm. Here's an example of some alarms I'll be using to do my filtering demo. And again, down the line, talking about worksheets. So we're looking for not only what do these items have in common, but who do they need to go to? And I've created different strategies. I prefer to make my strategies based on the name of the people I want to notify. So I've named strategies named managers, operators, techs, safety department, and engineers. These strategies would eventually point to a tactic or call out list of people. So on the first one, these items, these tags or blocks, they'd have a worksheet number of 1 to 2. I will send these over to our managers. The second item, all these items with the fill tank, they had north, south, east, west. This tank is all high. So it has a message that says tank level high. All of these alarms will go to our operators. Next, that drive fault example I gave with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these I will filter on tag name for drive, and I will point them to the technicians. Next, these two alarms, they have a specific priority, and I want to point them to our safety department. Finally, we have our last couple of alarms. They have a selection for building number 1. These alarms will point to our engineers. The first one, alarm worksheet number. So we are under Alarming InTouch Subscriptions, and this is where we will configure these next 4 or 5 subscription filters. First, you start off, you give the item a name. We name it Managers. And the item we wanted to filter on, we said it had a sheet number of 1 or 2. So you can filter by a specific worksheet or a range of worksheets. Here I chose to filter by a range of worksheets between 1 and 2. So we'd make this filter and we would click the Save button, and then we would move on to the next filter. So anything that has a worksheet 1 or 2 would be caught by this filter. The next one, we want to filter on alarm messages. For our operators, we had alarm message that has tank level high. Now, under the messages, you have the ability to filter on a couple things. It has contains, does not contain, wildcard, or a regular expression. I'll be focusing on these first 3 in this video. But this filter would contain the word level. You can use the asterisk for a wildcard. One thing to keep in mind during a troubleshooting process as you put these in here is the case sensitivity of your alarms. What you have over in Win911 here should match what you have over in SCADA. So during your troubleshooting, you should make sure that's something that you do configure. You could also do something like does not contain this word, or just the wildcard, as I'll show you in later videos. So we have operators, we're looking for a specific message that contains level. So we'd save this and move on. Next, we have our technicians filter. And this was the alarm we had PKG_1, drive 1, fault, and then we had drives 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Again, you can look for the contains, does not contain. Here you can see I'm filtering on a wildcard. So I'm looking for wildcard drive, wildcard. So anything there is included, anything after the word drive is included. So if I had a 6th drive, this filter would automatically catch this alarm. Next, we can filter on specific priority. In this one, we wanted to filter on a specific priority between 150 and 175. We would name this filter for the safety department. You can also filter on a specific priority. Say, for example, you know it's exactly 175, you could filter just on that priority. So we'd save this item and move on. The last item you could filter on is selections, and this is an engineer alarm we would like to create. So we have engineers, and we were filtering on building number 1. As you can see here, the contains, does not contain wildcard. All these options still apply, whichever you may choose. I chose to use wildcard. We use asterisk building, asterisk. So this would catch that building and the 1 by using that asterisk. So we'd save this item. Now those would be our 5 filters. Also, I'd like to mention one thing you might have saw in the past slides is there's the label feature. This label field, this comes in handy, for example, if you have the advanced license of software. You can make this item for building number 1 have a label for building number 1. Using the advanced tactic, you do a call-out list to check once this alarm is caught by this filter, it's given the label building 1. Then you can do a call-outs for does this have a building 1? Yes, let's call out these certain people. Is it a certain time of day? Whatever it might be. You can use these advanced tactics. But one thing to keep in mind is using those labels and to really take advantage of those advanced tactics, you have to have the advanced license of a software. So far in the process, we've caught these alarms, but now we need to point them to a certain place. We need to point them to a strategy, and that strategy will point to a call-out list of people. So we've created these alarm subscriptions. Now we will go through the routing process, a subscription route. We're in the Alarming InTouch ME Projects tab, and over here, we're on the subscription routes. So each of these subscriptions we made, we'll point them to a route. So the safety department, that was that we wanted to filter on a specific priority. If it has specific priority, we wanted to point to the safety department strategy. That strategy points to a call list. So you just add each one of these, it says subscription, and then the strategy. The next one we had was, these are a little bit out of order, and I'll explain why. The next one we have is managers. And this one we wanted to filter on if it was a certain worksheet number. If it was worksheet number 1 or 2, we wanted to do a call-out list. So this would point to the manager strategy. The next one we had was technicians. If this had drive for drive fault in it, this would catch the alarm, and we'd like to point it to the technician strategy. The next one we had was engineers. If it had engineers, engineers were looking for the building number 1. If it had building number 1, we pointed to the engineer strategy. We also had the operators. The operators were looking for if the tank level was high. So if that was high, then this would catch the operators. So as the alarms come in, it'll check against the subscription. Does it meet this criteria for safety department, meaning it has a priority? Let's say no, it doesn't. Does it have this worksheet number? No, this alarm does not. And it'll just keep going down the line until eventually an alarm is caught. So let's say it's caught by the engineer's subscription route. It meets that criteria. Then it'll be routed to the strategy for engineers. This route will point to the tactic for engineers and do a call out. You can use these buttons at the bottom to rank order these items by priority. Say, for example, the safety items for the priority range, that is your most critical item. You put your most critical items up at the top. So you can use these plus and these little arrows. You can slide these items up and down the list. Now, what happens if you make a new alarm, it's not being caught by your strategy? Or say, for example, you don't go by case sensitivity, or your strategy doesn't have or your subscription does not have all the criteria to catch your alarm. What happens to the alarm then? Well, this is where what we call a catch-all comes into play. We can add a sixth subscription called all alarms. By making the all alarms, this will point to the do not notify strategy. With the do not notify strategy, you can use this item for some advanced troubleshooting. So say, for example, all alarms come through and it's caught by the all alarms. At least we know it's going someplace. This would be going to do not notify. I'll be showing you next using a Logviewer how you can do some troubleshooting with that exact item. Okay, what is Logviewer? Logviewer is basically a historian type logger which records all the events going on with Win911. It's accessed through the Win911 folder, or it has this little icon you can place on the desktop. You can check the status of alarms to see if they're active, unacknowledged, acknowledged, whatever it might be, and you can see which strategy was executed. Here's an example inside of Logviewer of an alarm that went off. You can see the date, time it happened, the name of the point, the source, your source would be InTouch ME, and the strategy that executed. So you can be on the alarming tab and see all this information, or you can click the date, time. You can go back in time and you can search to see some past alarming events. You also have the ability to acknowledge an alarm through this page. On the notifications tab, you can have some more detailed information. You can see exactly who the alarm went to. This alarm went to Frank, and there's their email, and it says that email was sent is successful. And you can see when it was dispatched and all those events. You can also see when the alarm was acknowledged or unacknowledged. Okay, back to that do not notify. So we said that alarm went through here and then eventually was caught by the do not notify. Let's say you mistyped something, you had some case sensitivity, your subscription didn't catch all your items. At least we know using the all alarm or this catch all, it's going to catch all those last few alarms. So if it's caught by do not notify, we can use this Logviewer as a tool for our troubleshooting. So in this example, the alarm goes through, it's caught by do not notify. At least we know that it went to some strategy, and then by seeing it go to the do not notify, we know that it filtered through all these other routes, all these other subscriptions, and was not caught. At least in this method, we can go back and investigate our past subscriptions and reevaluate our English, our typing, case sensitivity, things of that nature to make sure that our subscriptions are correct. Next, I'll be showing you the second method for bringing your alarms over, the alarm import method. But again, you only need to use one of these methods, either subscriptions or this next method, alarm import, and it's your choice. Okay, to do this, you'll begin the alarming, InTouch ME, and the imports tab. So this is very similar to version 7 and how you bring your alarms over. You pick which ones you want, and then you'll point them to a call. So you'll be on this first list here, give you a little message, and you can click the next button to proceed. On this tab, this is where you'll just name your project, and you can select your JSON file from InTouch ME. You can also use the little ellipse to access that file, but here's some instructions on where that file is typically located. Once you click next, you'll go ahead and you'll see some of your tags that are available on the left side, and then you can push the little button to bring that tag over or push it backwards if you don't want it. In this example, I'm bringing the switch to tank level and tank level 2, and you can give it a safety label. This is where you do those labels down there. And again, that feature is really handy when you have the advanced license of software and you can do advanced tactic and advanced call out. Finally, you'll click the next button for whichever alarms you want to bring over, and you can point them to a specific strategy. Let's say we want to point these to the strategy of safety department. That's where we would select this strategy. So it's similar to the subscriptions where you point those alarms to a strategy, but the means in which you bring them over is slightly different. So we click next, whichever alarms we want to bring over. And eventually we go through the import process. The process and how long it takes, that depends on how many tags you have. That's all for our InTouch ME alarm filters and imports video. Thank you for watching.